Hey, welcome into the Ben Maynard program. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for being here. I want to remind everyone that the program is now available on multiple podcast outlets, such as Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podcast Index, Podcast Addict, Player FM, Podchaser, I'll get that one right, Pocket Casts, and Spotify. That's a mouthful. And of course, if you can't resist this right here, all of this, you can always check out the program right here on YouTube. And if you do, please subscribe to the program or the channel, give it a like and leave a comment. And last but not least, follow me on Instagram. It's Ben Maynard Program, all one word. So there are plenty of ways to take in the program for your dancing and listening pleasure. All right. So I want to recap the last episode real quick. As you can see, I have a beautiful guest in studio, so I don't want to leave her just sitting here. But I want to recap the last episode. That was with Deep Cut Dennis. It was a great episode. It was a ton of fun. And I wish the camera would have stayed rolling beyond the time that we did, because I think the conversation that was going on after the camera stopped was just as good as what was happening during the actual episode. But we've gotten some good response on it. And if you do view it and you like it, just like I said, leave a nice comment. All right. So that being said, as you can see, I have here Gianna Kleinpell. And you'll ask, who's Gianna Kleinpell? Gianna is my niece. And the reason why Gianna is in today is she has an absolutely fabulous story. I think it's fascinating. And it's one that I believe needs to be told. And that is the premise of this program. So with that, I'm going to bring in my niece, Gianna. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I feel so honored. Let's kick you off and get you some subscribers.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that works. Well, I want to start out by saying, I want to mention to everyone, you had a birthday fairly recently. And with that birthday, you spent some time in Paris, right?
I did.
And how'd that go?
It was fabulous. I turned 50. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of like checking a lifelong dream box.
Okay.
So.
All right. One of those bucket list things, right? Oh,
for sure. And Paris did not disappoint. It was awesome. Can't wait to go back.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Gianna has been in my family now for, let's see, this would be 12 years.
Yeah.
12 years. And you're going to say, well, she's your niece. How's she in your family for 12 years? Well, that's why she's here. She's going to tell that story. And Gianna came to our family in a real fascinating way, because she wasn't part of the family so much 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Gianna was adopted, and I'm going to leave it right there and let Gianna, I'll tell you what, I'm going to set this up for you, Gianna. And we can backtrack a little bit too, but when did you find out that you were adopted?
Honestly, yeah. I don't ever remember not knowing I was adopted. Okay. I remember my parents had two children's books that explained adoption. And so I just remember those, and it was never really an issue for me. So knowing I was adopted was just sort of something that was ingrained in me, and it wasn't any sort of traumatic experience.
Okay. So that goes as far back as you can remember. Then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
it wasn't like your parents waited till you were 10 years old and, okay, Gianna can understand this now. We're going to tell her that she's not biologically ours, that we adopted her.
Yeah, no transition like that. It was just, I always knew. Okay. And going to elementary school, I went to a private school up until 3rd grade. And then I went to 3rd grade to public school. Mm-hmm. And there were so many kids that were adopted. So being adopted just was kind of like, oh, there, Andrea and Michelle are adopted. Oh, Michael and Steven. Oh, so all these people. So it was just like a thing. So that I think was pretty awesome too. So in my whole life, it was never a negative at all. And my adopted family, my family, they, there was no different treatment from them. So it was just
Right.
always
Right.
very loving, which is pretty awesome because it doesn't always go that way.
Well, yeah, that's for
Right.
sure.
Right.
Biologically or not,
Yeah.
it doesn't always go that way. So since you already knew and you were part of this adopted kids club at school now, when was it that you decided that you wanted to seek out your biological family?
Well, it's funny. It was all very organic. I always remember at my folks' house growing up, they had like important files in like those little little paper cardboard file boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And they always had my adoption file there. And so I would look in there. So I knew my birth mother's name. And so but I was young. I was 8, 9, 10. So I never really did anything with it.
Right.
So fast forward to married, have my own child. And it was those times when, your kids are young and they wake you up in the middle of the night, and Facebook was fairly new. And so one night I was just like up, she had woken me up and I was like, well, let me just go on my iPad, and I was searching on Facebook, and it was so new. It was like you pop somebody in your head and be like, oh, let me see if they're on Facebook. So it was that kind of thing. So then I decided to look up, I have to rewind.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So
no problem.
So now I'm talking when my daughter woke me up, we're talking like 2000, 2009, 2010.
Okay.
Back in maybe 2004, not married yet, no children, I did a people search, an internet people search. I paid like 99 cents and I typed in my birth mother's name. And I don't even think I remember. I can't recall if I knew my birth father's name.
Okay.
So I typed in my birth mother's name, and this whole list of everybody with the last name Enlich popped up.
Okay.
And so there were a lot of people, and it was really kind of hard to like figure out who was tied to who, but I did deduce who were my parents, my birth parents. So I found their address. So I remember the guy I was dating at the time, who became my husband and father of my children.
Right.
We were driving past, we were living in Long Beach at the time, and we were driving past their house in El Monte, and he's like, let's stop by. And I said, oh my gosh, no. And I can't remember what we were doing, but we looked kind of grubby. Like maybe we were moving something. So I said to him, no, I don't want to go because like we're going to look grubby. Like they're going to think we want something. I said, no, let's do it another time. So he's like, no, let's do it. So we pull up to the house. Well, we pull a little away, and he gets out and walks to the house. And there's a security screen.
Yes.
So he knocks on the door, and he's like, oh, should I say everybody's names?
Well,
can I say everybody's names?
Yeah, we're not changing the names to protect the innocent.
I didn't know what,
But let me stop you right there for a second. So, what year is this? Because you did the people search, you said about 2004.
Okay, so this is probably 05 or 06. I had that information for a long, long time.
All right. And I want to put a pin in that just for a second, because now, before we start revealing names, it's not a reveal anyway.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
But before we start talking names and bringing family members into this, now let me explain this from my position. Okay. My first wife is Gianna's biological aunt. Okay. So Gianna's biological parents are my ex-wife's sister and brother-in-law. Okay, so my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Unfortunately, they're no longer with us. That would be Ray and Teresa. But so that's where I come into this, and that's coming from my side of it. Gianna and I are not blood relatives, but we sure love like we are. And the one thing that I say about our family before we move forward, and I think it even speaks louder once Gianna did come into the family, that this family, we fight hard, but we love hard. So it's just one of those things, right? But it's all Italians too. So I mean, what are you going to do? Anyway, so okay, so now that we know a little bit about my side of it. Now, go ahead and tell me what happens when Sean knocks on the screen.
So
and I remember that security screen door too.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So mind you, this is the house that like they've been there for years, right? So Sean, my ex-husband, knocks on the door and he says, "Is Ray there?" And the guy behind the screen who says, "Well, who wants to know?" And I don't even know what Sean said. I don't remember at that point, but it didn't really go well. It wasn't like we went in and had coffee or anything.
Right.
And then he came back and he just said, maybe he just said, "No, he's not here." Let's just say he said that. And then we went about our way, and that was pretty much it. And then fast forward now years later to what I say, 2009, 2010,
right.
when I'm searching, Olivia Has Me Woken Up, and I'm on Facebook.
Sure.
So I have the list of people, and so I kind of tie people by address, and it has like the same people but different addresses listed or whatever. So I type in Ray and Teresa's names.
Right.
And so it was a lot of research, but then it was like I came to find out that they had passed.
Yes.
Which was just so devastating in a not in a way that like my sister's devastation, but it was just kind of like, wow, that's like, I don't want to cry, but like, that's it. Like, you can't go back to the source,
okay.
Like that's it. Like that, nobody can tell me from their perspective,
right,
why we ended up here,
Yeah.
So, so come to find out, my birth mother had passed away at 58.
Yes.
And this was the summer I was turning 38. So I was like, oh my God, like I've only got 20 years to live. Like I have no, so it was just kind of like kind of sobering because, I never knew how old they were is in relation to my parents, but they were all sort of the same age. And
right.
So it was, I don't know. It was just shocking, like they were quite young, really, when you think about it.
Oh, no, very young.
I mean, obviously Teresa was, but even Ray was still,
Ray was, I believe, 70.
Yeah. So, so it was just a little bit of a bummer that like, I never got to like hear. So then I went to like the next name on the list, which was my sister, Lisa. And that was kind of funny because there's some financial guru out in the world, or in the United States anyways, that has the same name as my sister, at least her maiden name. And so I kept finding her. I type her in and it was, and Google was still Google, but it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
So, so I finally, am I going in the right direction with this? Yeah. So
this is your story, and I'll interject whenever I need to, because now that we kind of know the crux of it, we're going to go back and forth. We're going to go back in time. We're going to come back to the present. We're going to go back and so it's this is good.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, so okay, so where was I? Okay, so I finally I'm on Facebook and I find so then ongoing on Facebook, then I see another woman who happens to be my other sister, Brenda.
Yep.
On there, but she really wasn't in the people search, because now come to find out, she got married young, and I think she just didn't fall in. I don't know why, but she was on the list, but it wasn't like easily tied. So anyway, so I see her and I'm like, okay, so who is that? So finally I find my sister, Lisa. She commented on some car detail picture. And so through that, I was able to message her.
Wow.
And I just said like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I believe you are my sibling. I want nothing from you, because I don't want them to think like, oh, can I have some car? You got some money? Right. I just want information.
Yeah.
So that was on a Sunday. And my daughter was young at the time. And so we had Disneyland passes. So we went to Disneyland, and I was just kind of emotional because I was like, wow, like this is like real. Like my whole life, 37, my whole life I've wondered, even though I never had any trauma during my about my adoption, I did wonder. I have like the goofiest toes. So I would always wonder like, man, who has feet like me?
You know what those are called in the Adragna family, which is the name of the family where everyone comes from. That's where all the girls come from. And by blood, Gianna is not only an Enlich, but, she's a Dragna. She has that Adragna heritage also. And I will say this, the Adragnas have Fred Flintstone feet.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah. And that's not, yeah. So
yeah. Well, then, like when I first, the first time I was sort of like, let me see your feet. And he like looked at my hand. No, I'm not even kidding. I had to know. At least then I have more similar feet than Brenda and I do.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, so we go to Disneyland, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, like, did I just drop a bomb in somebody's life right now? Like, was I being selfish? Like, what the heck is happening? So I just I'm there with Olivia, and we just like have fun. It was like a nice little distraction. Yeah. So the next day I go to work, and I'm on Facebook, and all of a sudden I see who now I know to be my beautiful niece, Cameron.
Right.
And I see it's like her first day of school, like let's say first day of first grade or kindergarten or something, first grade, because I met her when she was 6.
Right.
And I was like, I'm in the lounge in the PIHOR, and I'm scanning the lounge for somebody who's age appropriate that would have Facebook, because I worked with a lot of people, and I was like, okay, Ethel wouldn't know how Facebook works. So I look at my coworker Susie. I'm like, Susie, would I be able to see somebody's pictures if they didn't accept my friend request? And she's like, well, no. And I was like, oh my God. So that was my confirmation that Lisa had gotten the message, right?
Okay.
So later that afternoon, I go home. My mom was watching the kids at the time. And so I go home, and I was like, mom, and I got a message from Lisa. And so she's like, well, I'm going to stay so you can take the phone call. So Lisa and I have this big talk, and that's okay. So now it's Monday.
And this is 2011 now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And so August.
Yes.
So that's Monday. Wednesday, I have plans to meet my sisters in Rancho Cucamonga at a restaurant. Like, can I tell you? Like, my God, like my mind is blown at this point, because I grew up, listeners, viewers, I grew up an only child, which was great. I had a ton of cousins on both sides, so I wasn't like a lonely, weird only child. But like, so it was like always a dream to like have siblings, So this was like, what the heck? Like, who am I right now? What else happening? So we go and we meet at a restaurant, and they look at me, and we're outside, and the first thing they do is start crying, because I remind them exactly of their mother.
Now that
down to like the hands, and arms, everything. It was really, and we're all a bunch of criers. So it was just like, that was our first bonding. Like, you cry, I cry. Oh my God, we're all criers, I think Brenda had brought a box of Kleenex or something, in anticipation.
And I apologize. I meant to bring one into the studio here.
Oh, yeah.
And I forgot.
I was wondering if we had some.
No, I don't.
I'm trying not to cry, because I'm like, I don't have anything to wipe.
I might leave Gianna talking to you out there, and I'll go grab a box of Kleenex. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe my wife can hear me. she'll walk in the studio and bring a box.
Yeah.
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah. Tissues.
So
anyway, so we have this like wonderful reunion. It's just wild, like to hear, their tales of growing up and what they knew or didn't know about me. And, because there was some swirls of, talk of, wasn't there a baby, all this stuff. It's just such an onion to peel back. But, it was just amazing to like be in their presence. It was a dream come true, truly. So we're all there at this restaurant, just, we are commenting on our similarities. Like Brenda was like, oh, I'll take an iced tea with extra ice. I'm like, oh my God, I love extra ice too. And I'm looking at Lisa, I'm like, oh my God, I have, like an older, both of them are my older sisters, but like, it was just amazing. It was like, and we also have a brother. He lives in Arizona.
Yes.
So he wasn't part of like the main reunion, but he's a wonderful guy. I love you, Ken. Not that you're on YouTube, but
not that you'll be watching or listening to this, Kenny, but we're going to name drop you anyway. How's that? But, for me, now I'm just, for everybody out there, a peek behind the curtain. I'm married twice now. I'm on my second marriage. And so Gianna's niece, we were married for 25 years, and we were together the better part of 30 years. And so when I was married the first time, your aunt had actually told me in confidence. She says, yeah, my sister Teresa, she had a baby. She gave it up for adoption, but don't tell anybody. You're not supposed to talk about this, blah, 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 blah. So I held on to this secret. I didn't realize, I honestly didn't know that Lisa may have been aware, or Brenda may have been aware, or Kenny may have been aware. I didn't know the details behind it. That's all I knew.
Well, they were so young. Yeah. I mean, what, like 5, 7, 8, like so young.
Yeah, Lisa and I are the same age, and Brenda's what, 2.5 years,
she's 5
3
years
years.
Older than me. Yeah. So they were little when they were first exposed to the news.
And so I never brought it up. And then, oh gosh, it had to be around the year 2000. Somewhere around there, 2000, 2001. Brenda had mentioned to me, she says, I have a sister out there somewhere and I'm going to find her. I have a sister. And I'm thinking, okay, well, now she must be aware of the whole adoption thing. Well, I'm still not saying my piece. I'm still keeping my mouth closed. But that was the first I had heard that. Now, this, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, the search is on. So you knew about it way back when. I think maybe it sounds like that you all kind of knew about it or started your search right around the same time.
Yeah, right.
And so, so then I didn't hear anything about it for a long time. And then Gianna's aunt and I, we divorced. And we had just split up right before this big, I don't even call it a reunion, well, union, whatever you want to call it, but the big meeting. And it was, we found her, or she found out, however it was. And it was through Facebook, of course.
Yeah.
And so everybody knows what I find fascinating about this myself is that Gianna grew up really like a whole 6 miles from her biological family.
It's wild.
So close in proximity. And yet we never know if the paths ever crossed, if you were in the same place at the same time,
right?
And it's crazy to think about that, because I'm sure that there were a lot of common places that you would frequent as whether it was as a family or as a teenage girl growing up, that type of stuff. Right. So you never know if you happen to be standing right next to your sister or something at that time. Right. So it's just kind of,
well, that's wild. Yeah. I could tell you a little snippet about that, because so I was born in Montebello. The family, both of my birth parents' families were like born and raised and lived in Montebello.
Absolutely.
That was like kind of the hub of everything.
I think so.
So I work at so my mom works at this local community hospital. Mm-hmm. She's a nurse. She's a nursing, she starts there as a nurse. She goes to nursing supervisor. So she's on a different level with some of the doctors, as far as, it's not, I don't know, they're just a little bit more friendly. Right. And, so I meet my sisters on Monday or Wednesday at lunch.
Yeah.
And then Friday, my birth mother's entire biological family, well, pretty much was at my home. And it was like the most amazing thing. And then my folks came and surprised us. And it was the most wonderful thing, because so now we're talking like everybody's in their, my Aunt Jean and my mom and dad are all kind of like, the 80, they're right around
the same age. Yeah.
So everybody kind of, so it's crazy because my folks also spent some time in Montebello. So it's like, they all had like the same stomping grounds. They knew sort of the same people, and, it was just amazing. And so my mom being a nurse at the community hospital, the family, as once she adopted me and knew who I was related to, because there was all the case managers, everybody there, it was just so interconnected. So she knew so much more about, like, not what would be considered like HIPAA violations, but it was just the same families went to the same hospital for the same things, and the doctors.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. I know.
So, so then she started paying note, like, oh, that's her that's Gianna's grandparents. And one time she saw Ray there and she commented, she's like, wow, he was a really good looking man, and Brenda, you'll have to have Brenda on one day. You have to have the sisters on, because then she could tell you, I won't tell all the story because I'll leave it for her, but she can tell you, my mom and her had an encounter at the hospital, from patient to nurse. I mean, it's just wild. And it's just insane. And you and I, the 6 degrees of separation that go on from this, it's wild. So, it was really cool that the parents, a whole different generation had things in common, and it just made everything so much more good, because I didn't want to crush my parents, because they invested 37 years in me,
right?
Blood, sweat, and tears, the good, the bad. So I wanted to honor them, but as adoptive parents, they always knew that this was potentially part of the journey, and I checked with them before I embarked on all this.
No, please, it's okay. I apologize. I don't have any tissue.
I don't want to ugly cry on camera.
You're not going to ugly cry.
But because
great.
I wanted to consider them. I don't want to think So it's just been a really lovely union for everybody, because it's just turned out unbelievably great.
Yeah, and I'll say from my side of it, I was pretty disappointed I didn't get to attend that, people. But that's what happens when that's what happens when marriages end.
Yeah.
But I will say this. Yes, when I speak generally of my family, and not that I do it on this show a lot, but if I ever do, most of the time I'm speaking about my ex-wife's family, what would be considered in-laws. And the one thing that I will say about that family is family is not disposable to them. And we had 25 years and almost 30 years before Gianna had come into the picture, and now it's been 12 years. So we're talking, I've been a part of that for 40 years. And so that's the great part about the Adragnas. Like I said, family's not disposable, but they sure keep me around. That's it. And I appreciate that. And they welcome my wife in as well. My wife and my stepdaughter, they love them to pieces. And so it is so wild to think about. Now we're talking about the chance that you and your sisters may have been in the same place at the same time, but you go back and your parents know the same people that your family knows. They hang in the same places, run around in the same circles for the most part. And yet you never meet your biological family until you're 38 years old.
Yeah.
It's so wild. Now, so I'm assuming that for the most part, your mom, Jane Ann, that she knew who everybody was as they were making their way into Beverly Hospital for one thing or another, totally. Broken bones, skin knees, whatever, pregnancies, whatever it was. Right. So she's like, wow, that's this so-and-so. They're related to, Gianna's mother, and they're related, I think that's so wild. Now, as I heard it, and you can correct me, and actually I'll just start it off and then I want you to finish it. I heard how you came to be with your adoptive parents, that it was Teresa was in having you, and your mom and dad, Tom and Jane Ann, they were like in Palm Springs or something. Weren't they out of town?
They were going to go to the races.
Take it from there.
Yeah. Okay. So another crazy coincidence. Okay. So my parents were having for like fertility issues. So they had been married like probably 10 years. And so they had they had gotten an attorney and started adoption proceedings with the county. So they kind of already had that lined up. My birth mother, Teresa, and my mom shared the same OBGYN. So Teresa goes in, and I don't know the details, and my mom only knows the details from secondhand and whatever. But I mean, the nurses and the case managers that were involved.
Right.
So Teresa goes in to give birth, not necessarily having arrangements made, had certain requests she hoped were fulfilled. And Dr. Goff, God rest, I think he's passed now. He was Teresa's, he's there. And he calls up my mom and he says, "Hey, Jane Ann, I got a baby for you." And she's like, "What? We got plans. We're going to the races, in Ontario."
Right.
And
right.
So, but obviously her wits kick in and she's like, "Okay, obviously this trumps that." Right.
Yeah.
So they go to Thrifty, which is now Rite Aid.
Now,
I don't even know what it is now, right?
Local drugstore pharmacy.
Local drugstore. And they go to the baby section and she gets me some like clothes to like go to the thing, right? Because no shower, nothing. It was like, boom, hey, got a baby, come, get it while it's hot kind of thing, right? So, they do their thing. They get there. They feed me my first bottle and everything. So it was like the timing could not have been more perfect, and then off they take me home. And then 38 years later, I get to meet everybody else. It's that's
kind of how that's kind of how I heard the story, that it was like, "Hey, you want got a baby?
Yeah.
You want one?" Sort of. And I guess she, Tom, well, forget the races. We're going to go get a baby.
Right.
That's
it's like growing up, I never ever felt harsh feelings towards Teresa.
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's because I went to such loving parents that it wasn't like I didn't have trauma to be like, how did I end up here? But, I never judged her. I figured, hey, everybody makes they have to do what you got to do. And, so it was always like, I always looked at her fondly and not as like some woman who like, because,
Yeah. And, from my side of it, I don't know, because certainly that happened. That was before I was a part of the family,
Right.
And I only know what I know. And I certainly don't place any judgment either, because I don't know exactly at that time. And, what was this, 1973?
Yeah.
I don't know what Ray and Teresa's relationship was like. I don't, and I'm not going to pretend to know. Right. And so I don't make any judgments on that. But I can tell you this, in my estimation, and in knowing Teresa as long as I did before she passed, and knowing Ray would come around and he'd realize, oh, this is my daughter here, and he would. But Teresa, before she passed, she was the matriarch of the family. She was the matriarch, and this was something I think that she would have, she certainly would have embraced, because that's who she was. She was such a great-hearted person, but she put up with no BS, and I think she would have embraced you just as if as if you'd been there all along. Yeah. And I think to be honest, I think it probably would have also been, how do I say this? I guess it just would have been like lifted a tremendous weight off of her shoulders, knowing that, oh, here's my daughter now, and she is doing well. Right. The family she went to was good to her, and she's done well. And I'm so proud that now we have to, we get to be in each other's lives. And unfortunately, it never happened. Yeah. But
it's always neat to hear, like, stories about her, because, like, to know that she was a loving mom and wife and aunt and whatever role she was in, she was very loved. And it's just neat, because I never got to know her. gosh.
No, don't worry about it. It's okay. This is what this is all about.
It's just, because I never judged her.
Right.
So it's nice to know that, like, oh, wow, like her kids do love, her adult children speak so highly of her, and she left such an impression, and it's fun because, like, my sister Lisa and I were both foodies, and we bonded over cooking, and so Lisa gave me this, like, her recipe book of hers and her handwriting, and that, like, it's just so, like, it's fun to see the similarities, with my sisters, and then therefore through Teresa, because obviously that's where they stem from. So it's fun to see, like, oh wow, the cooking gene, that's definitely runs strong, and the loving gene, and the mouthiness gene, I mean, like, we all the girls don't, hold back. So,
no, that's for sure.
So it's just fun to see, like, the commonalities, even though, you wonder nature versus nurture, but nature's, definitely there, I mean, my sisters and I, we're also different, but we're also similar, and I can relate to each of them, in a way that's just wonderful. Like, it's just crazy, like being an only child and then having, like, those sister connections and the, like, I don't want to say telepathic things, but, like, it's just like we're on the same wavelength, even though we're far apart. It's just crazy. It's crazy, but I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And my kids, my kids benefit from it. And not to sound selfish, but, like, I'm an aunt and I love being an aunt. Like, I have 2 nieces and 3 nephews. It's, like, amazing. That's I'm a grandma now too. So that kind of took the place of, that's probably over mom right now, to be honest. But, it's up there. So it's just, it's wild. I just am so blessed to, like, be able to, like, find my biological family and have a relationship with them in a time frame where we will really have more time together than we did apart, which is, kind of interesting because, not growing up with them, there are times where I think, oh man, I missed out on a lot.
Right.
But, I can't really dwell on that because I can't really change anything, but then there's some parts I hear, like how they, Lisa and Ken tortured Brenda. And I was kind of like, oh no, I'm glad I came in, like, 38 years later, everybody settled down and, so, but yeah, it's just amazing. And, like, like you said, the family aspect, it's just, like, so, it's been so loving. And, it's like with some of my nieces and nephews, they don't know life without Auntie G in the picture.
Right.
Which is just, like, amazing to me because.
Yeah. So to hear this story, they'd be like, what?
Right.
She what?
Right.
Auntie G what?
Yeah,
no way.
Right.
But that's because you've been around their entire lives, know?
Oh. And even my adult, the ones that came into their life older, like, the boys and stuff, and even Kaylee, even still, we all still, I feel like we have connections, which is really awesome.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, they're all loving kids, so that helps too,
yeah. And the neat part is that you get to love your sisters like sisters, but you get to fight with them too, like sisters.
Yeah.
So the sibling stuff, it just, it doesn't matter what age, it's gonna, it bears itself out. But so how, you've touched on it a little bit, but go ahead and expound how the past 12 years have been being a part of this big Italian family.
It's so wonderful. It's like, the love has not only been extended to me and my kids and, my first husband and now my current husband, and also to my mom, dad, and my aunts and uncles.
Right.
It just.
Right.
It, like, knows. I just don't want to turn away from the camera. But it's like, it knows no bounds, so it's just, and it's like, it's hard to explain, but it's such a heart and soul fulfilling experience, because it's, it's all positive at the end of the day, the ups and downs, all that stuff. It's all positive, because my kids have a relationship with their aunts and uncle, and, you included not just the immediate ones. So it's just, it's a great example. Now our grandkids get to come up in the family, and the Christmases and the holiday. It's just amazing. The summer parties. It's just a blast.
And that's the one thing we do really well is we throw a good shindig.
Yeah, it's just amazing, the togetherness, and it's the the taking the time and you know, we all went on our family vacation and we like enjoy each other like legit. I mean, we haven't really all seen each other.
What do we spend? What do we spend? Like 10 or 11 days in Alaska?
Yeah.
So,
but it was a blast. So, you know, it's just it's the last 12 years have been just wonderful, and it's so fun because it doesn't, like I said, it spills off over to everybody. Like with you and Victoria, you know, his hairstylist for how many years?
Oh, let's see. I've known Victoria since she was 17. And she's like, we're just old now, right
anymore.
Now.
Yeah,
but she's. Let's put it this way. I'll tell everybody, since the year 1986, only 2 women have cut my hair, and they were sisters. And so Victoria's been cutting my hair now, oh gosh, like 23 years.
Yeah. And her and I met because she was dating my friend from like elementary or from junior high school, her brother. It was just insane. And then her sister and I were best friends. And then come to find out that this woman who I'd known my whole, like since my 20s, 30s, knew him. It's just wild. And then your brother being married to Timmy Pipkin's sister, this kid that I went to elementary school, his brother is married to his sister. Like, what the heck? So now we're going from Montebello to Hacienda Heights.
Yeah.
It's just
so now, and so see, now it's not just everything that's been interwoven with the Adragnas. Now we have all those. I shouldn't even say all those. We have those very few degrees of separation because it's so close.
Yeah.
And yet we had no idea at the time. Not until 12 years ago. And I still remember that. The day that we met, and we talked about it a little bit, and we believe it was Thanksgiving, not Italian Thanksgiving, and that's something else. But I remember driving to my daughter's house, and my ex-wife grabs me by the hand as soon as I walked in the door, grabs me by the hand and drags me over and says, I want you to meet my niece, Gianna. What do you think? And I say, she looks exactly like Teresa. I said, I see Teresa. And then I do remember this. I said, let me see your hands. And Gianna shows me her hands. I said, you have Teresa's hands. So, but it's, it's been something, that's for sure, the last 12 years. And the good part is, one of the good parts, and we always want what's great for our kids, and the kids, there's just like instantly got themselves a whole boatload of cousins and
and
aunts and uncles.
Evan was 18 months old. So
he was,
the kids don't know life without this family, their family, you know? So it's amazing. I mean, you know, you can, as an only child, you can, you know, I have cousins and the kids would have cousins and you can create aunties and that kind of thing. But to like just have it at the ready is just amazing. You know, their life is, and you know, one of Olivia's closest friends is her cousin Cameron. I mean, they're like palsies. It's just wonderful, you know? So yeah, it's amazing.
It is. It really is. And it's a great story. And that's why, I came to you months ago when I still didn't know how to hook up my podcast equipment. and I said, this is what I'm doing. And I want you on, and I want you to tell your story. And, because who knows how many other stories like yours are out there that haven't been heard.
Oh.
And you know, and sometimes it's from shame or embarrassment, whatever it might be. But the bottom line in all this, the one unifying thing in this whole ordeal is one simple word. It's a 4-letter word, and it's love. And I tell you, that's the one thing that this family has in abundance is love.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I said it again, but it's still worth, it's such a good phrase. It's so worth repeating. We fight hard, but we love hard. Yeah. And, but yeah, your story is just great. And I just wanted you to be able to tell it. But beyond that, why don't you kind of talk about what you're doing now? Talk about your business between you and your husband.
Oh yeah, well, you know,
hey, this is all about, you know, we'll get some plugs out here too.
Yeah, well, you know, I spent 20 plus years as a surgical tech over at PIH, which is, I love, amazing career.
Now, those of you who are listening, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Gianna, but those of you who are listening around the country, I'm sure there's so many of you. PIH is a local hospital in Whittier. Okay.
Yeah, it's the local hospital in Whittier.
Yes.
So
all right.
If you're in the area, you know, it's a prestigious establishment.
It actually is.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a good place. But yeah, so I had a great career there. I, you know, had amazing coworkers. I had my children at that hospital. I, you know, got divorced. I met my new husband and my current husband, my only husband, Darren Kleinpell. And so he is in real estate. And so it got to the point where I was like, well, you know, let me cut down my hours. And I worked part-time and did a little real estate. And then finally I just phased out. It was COVID really that sealed the deal.
Okay.
It was like, get your vaccine or get fired. And that's a whole other show. So anyways, I ended up leaving and doing real estate full time. So now, you know, we have a real estate business, which, you know, the real estate market 2023 was a year, but real estate is still the best investment you can make. You marry the house, date the rate. That's Gianna from Kleinpell Team Realty giving you that information. Call us. We have a YouTube channel. Check it out. No podcasts, but YouTube channel.
Actually, they do have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, but no. So it's been wonderful. So, you know, to be an adult learner and do that was kind of fun for my brain to like do something else. And it's really fun. I enjoy it. And it's freed me up to spend time with my teenage kids. And, you know, so it's been a great career change, you know, for everybody.
Right on. Well, you know, we're getting into the holiday season here, right? Once we hit Halloween, the holidays, the season kicks in, and that means a busy time for us, right? It means a real busy time for our family. We have a lot of things going on, and you know, family get-togethers, and it's always good stuff. Listen, I tell you what, I can't thank you enough for coming in here and doing this.
It was wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate it.
Pinned down a time.
We finally got it done. And we had issues before. You should have seen I was just beside myself with technical issues before we got this thing going. And I go stomping out of the studio and I said, this is so unprofessional. I bring my niece into my home and my studio, and things aren't working the way they're supposed to be working. But, you know, because I have a wonderful wife, I'm going to give her credit. You know, whether she jerry-rigged things, however she figured it out when I walked out, she did. And we got this episode in here done. And again, I thank you so much for doing it, because it's a lot of fun. And as I said, the story needs to be told. And, you know, maybe it will encourage others to do the same. Yeah. Share their story, you know.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. It's been fun. I'm glad. Look forward to coming back with my sisters.
Yeah, well, we may have to have an all sister show, huh?
That would be fun.
Oh gosh, I probably would get run right out of the studio.
I know, right? We could have Tia come in with his wife.
It would just take over.
Oh my god, yeah, he'd be. That would be all you'd see of Ben Maynard.
Yeah, that would be it.
It might increase your views.
Right. Well, we'll see about that. I could use them. Anyway, so that's going to wrap it. Thanks so much for being here. I'm not going through all those podcast outlets. You're going to have to remember it or rewind this episode and go back and listen to it. But I will say that once again, if you are viewing this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, leave me a thumbs up and a comment too. I'd greatly appreciate it. I like to read the comments. There aren't many right now, but I'll take what I can. and I do reply to them. So get in on it before I just blow up and become a megastar, and then I'm not going to reply to anyone's comments. Yeah, right. Last but not least, follow me on Instagram, Ben Maynard Program. So with that, it's a wrap. This is the Ben Maynard Program. Tell a friend.